I'm not the biggest fan of this. The
Mm-hmm.
reason being is that we already have a coordinate, and so new call is not a coordinate. So I have this, by the way, which I think is a little bit clever. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think it's a little bit clever. But we have this chord thing in which you can pass in coordinates, but due to the fact that we do structural typing
Mm-hmm.
in the old what's it called in the old TypeScript, I do a lot of things inside of like say movement test, in which let's see where's a good one. Where is a good one? Here we go. I can just like clone as a coordinate the player because the player
Mm-hmm.
fulfills the coordinate type interface, and so then I
Yeah.
can clone things out. And so by having something that looks like, see, this is one of those things. These are like those small gripes I have with this type of stuff, where it's like,
Yeah.
if I wasn't
Let's.
so in tuned with the results, by having this now, how does this apply to the front end? Well, I can tell you this much, that you can't use chord apply. So I can't just say, hey, passing the player, passing this other coordinate, just apply it to this, to that. It just doesn't have that as like an idea. Now it has this whole like, I'm now going to have the reapplication of the same logic in a new location.
Yeah. 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 It's like it made that test without considering. It didn't consider the existing test patterns that you had, where you already have some good things down. So maybe we actually go back to that chat and we say, hey, let's actually follow some of the patterns in that other test file, and also
Okay.
don't be so verbose with testing every single edge case. Like,
Yeah. Because
it's
this, I think Dax talked about this, which is when you vibe out code, you look at the code and there's all these little things you wouldn't have done it that way. But
yeah.
it's also like, well, I mean, with coding, there's literally an infinite different ways you can solve a problem. So it's just like, why is this problem worse? Why is it better? Well, if you don't even have a foundation, how do you know that you're not creating this weird, like, just this like thousand cuts problem that's slowly generating over time? Because this is a cut. Even though I know a lot
Yeah.
of people in the audience don't really understand why this is a cut, this is like what I'd consider a very frustrating, obvious cut.
Yeah. A way I like to think about it, and maybe this will resonate, maybe it won't, is like to build anything good, anything that's creative, and I will consider programming to be creative here. You need to consume a lot of high quality stuff so that you can calibrate yourself to what good looks like. And you're going to start by generating shit, and then eventually it's going to get good. Um, I think here the trouble is if you jump into the vibes too far and you just blindly follow what the model outputs, and if it's not actually extremely high quality code, you might not have a good reference point for, hey, wait, we could have done it this way and it could be so much better. Some of this you can like prompt, you can ask like, are there ways we could refactor this and make it better? But like that will only get you so far, I think. There is a ceiling to that.
Okay. Um, okay, someone's asked, why is this a big cut? It's very, very simple. So let's pretend I'm going to call this this function right here, right? So I'd go, it's going to probably look something along the lines of what? Something that looks like this, success. It's going to have a new call, and a new row, right? So you're going to see something that looks like this, and then I'm going to call into this function, and whoopsie poopsies, that's the wrong thing. Do that, and let's just paste in this thing, right? You're going to see something like this. Well, now we're going to have this if not successful. We have to have this kind of like, what are we going to do right here? Right, we're going to handle it right there, right? Which that makes sense. We should always be successful. I guess you could make the argument that if you're against a wall and you move into it, and then you don't change your position, but I think there's maybe a different way we could solve this. Maybe I'm not precisely sure if we want to solve it this way. If I was on the front end, honestly, what I'd do at the end of a game tick, I would see if the player had a motion and if their position has changed, and if it has, I'd craft the server message and send it up. But that's just a me problem, I guess. And so with this thing right here is we have these two. So then what I'd do is I'd have something that looks like this. I'd now have to go player row equals new row, and then I'd have player call equal new call. When if it was kind of more my way, what I would do is I would just do something that looks like this, which is I just have res, right? And then I'd have a res success. So, or, even res could just be undefined if it can't make that motion. And then I would just simply have c dot apply, which is my coordinate system, and just go player res, right? And so it's just like I'm using all the facilities of applying. If I have to put in any extra logic in here, if I have anything else, I already know all these things are happening. So I just create the object once, apply the object once, it's gone.
Yeah.
Sorry. So it's like these little tiny interface changes that just add up over time. And then maybe the AI instead does something that looks like this, right? Where it actually goes, row is new row, right? It does like this kind of transformation object in between. And you're just like, okay, these things are all just kind of my one line of code becomes like 7 lines of code. And
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere it goes, that's why when you see people brag on the internet, like, oh man, I'm just making 10,000 lines of code, I'm just like, well, lines of code is not a measurement. It's never been a
Right.
measurement. And I don't know why we now entered a world where that is now a measurement. It's like, that's a stupid measurement. I'll give you that
Yeah.
much. So there you go. That's
I would
where,
be curious if you take that and you throw it back to that chat you had open. Like, let's try to get it to refactor to more of the interface you wanted, because
Yeah.
I liked that. That was nice.
Thank you.
Nice to look at.
yeah, no, it does. It feels nicer because that's how all my tests and everything are set up, is to
Yeah.
have that kind of experience where a player, like, object messages coming back from it can also be just transformed immediately into a coordinate. Like every single map cell, I can just go coordinate. It's a coordinate. I can treat it like these kind of like little additions or differences throughout the system just because it feels better to use it that way. All right, let me just yank this bad boy and go, all right, transform this. Whoa, that does not seem, that was too many rows of code.
Too many lines.
Yeah, too many lines right there. Transform, I can tell something's gone wrong, I just don't know what it was. Transform this to be in line with the coordinate interface. I assume I can just say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Coordinate interface, it should go grep find coordinate. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Grep interface coordinate, boom. Thank you,
Got it.
AI.
Yep. Anyways, so there you go.
No, I agree a lot with that rant, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just worried about the 1,000 cuts because this is just one
Well-
little cut. It's so, it doesn't even matter, right? Like it's just like, it doesn't really affect anything within the game. You know, I don't have a real performance constraint considering I'm just drawing squares and maybe a couple shaders at the end of the day. Like it's
Yep.
like there's very little going on with the game. It's going to be quite simple.
The way I would describe it, and I think vibe coding as a word has captured the mind share of so many people because it's catchy, it's fun, it's memey. But there was a group of people who were trying to make this distinction of like vibe coding for prototypes, which was like the original idea,
Yep.
and then using AI to just help me write code better and ignore the stuff I don't want to do. And over time, it hasn't really worked like that. I think people have started to use the words kind of interchangeably, like vibe coding is just using AI. And like, for better or for worse, that's kind of the state of the world today. But I think what you're describing is an example of where I think vibe coding really fails, which
I
is
have to go get my bread.
Go get your bread. Go get your bread.
My bread is now available. I'll be right back.
Well, I will continue with my rant here. This is where I think vibe coding fails because you are actually creating little small pieces of technical debt, which Prime was calling cuts, that accumulate over time, and you're not really paying down that tech debt unless you're very mindful of it. And if you're very mindful of it, then that's the difference between vibing and just being an engineer, just building something with AI. Now that distinction, I don't know if it's as catchy or memey as saying vibe coding, so maybe people will just prefer to use that. But if you are tending the garden, if you are gardening the code base, if you're making it better over time, if you're thinking about things like what Prime just described with the interface structure, the API structure, what the response looks like, what the schema looks like, then that's how you can get out of that circle of suck of we're just in this vibing world and we're not getting back to something that's actually well engineered.
All right. Hold on. Bread check. Hold on.
Bread check.
It's right before hairline check. All right, let me get a nice look up at it so we can just get the main cam. Beautiful.
That looks really good.
Thank you. I don't have a banana, but here's an extra sized coffee cup. So we got some inches on there, okay? More than the average inches.
It's girthy.
Inches.